thank you very much to all of you for making it today. I'm so glad that you found the time from your busy schedules on a weekday to make it here. And I am Vijay Raj. I'm a partner with OD Alternatives for those who might not know. And as you know, the title of the program is Using ONA to Make Key Talent Decisions. Right. I just wanted to talk quickly about why we thought this program and especially in this format would be needed. So I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have heard this word ONA, right? And some of you might know the full form also, Organizational Network Analytics. But beyond that, there has been a lot of buzz, a lot of jargons, and nowadays, any new thing comes up, all the consultants and salespeople start promising that this new thing is going to change the world, right? Be it big data or be it blockchain or be it ONA. But we wanted to spend some good, calm time with this subject because for us, number one, ONA is not just a better, but a very fundamentally different way of looking at the reality in our organizations. And we wanted to make sure that we share that sense of how that fundamental difference looks like with all of you. Number two, although you would get a sense of what ONA really is, the other practical question would be what exactly are the applications and business benefits on the ground? So that is another part that we wanted to share. And to do that, we thought rather than we speaking about it, why not invite some of our industry leaders and friends who have actually used ONA and have them speak about their experiences and what their perspectives are. Right. And we also thought this time, hey, rather than just inviting the whole world and random people, why not invite some of the curious, courageous souls from our own ODA family, right? And that's how all of you ended up getting personal invites from us. And again, thanks to you for making it here. And because this is going to be a close-knit group, I'm sure this is going to be a very intimate, relevant, and meaningful conversation. On that note, I would now like to invite our esteemed guests today who have come here and given their time to share their experiences. I'll go with Kamaljeet first. Kamaljeet, welcome. And Kamaljeet is currently the Chief Human Resources Officer at Sterlite Power. She has over 18 years of experience with the Indian as well as MNCs, be it Hero Honda Motors, Wrigley India, Jubilant Foodworks. She has worked across the entire employee life cycle. You name it, she's done it. Be it leadership hiring, talent management, succession management, leadership development, change management, employee relations, end to end, right? So welcome, Kamal. And again, thank you very much for making it here.
Thanks, Vijay. That's quite a lot. That's a great introduction. Thank you. Thanks. And thank you to all the participants. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to, kind of through this seminar, probably be able to give you a good glimpse of ONA, the practical insights. The experts are sitting just across, and and also how we've been able to use it. But thank you for this introduction.
Yeah, and just so that everybody knows, what I just said about Kamaljeet is the short version, right? So the longer version I have still not said. Yeah, and then welcome Rohit, of course. Rohit is an XLRI alumni, and he has over 25 years of experience. Played many leadership roles in the field of HR. He was most lately the group CHRO for Paytm from I think December 2019 to June 2021. He has also worked with Accenture, where he was heading HR as their MD Human Resources for the India Geographic Unit. And prior to that, he has worked in Microsoft, in GE for 11 years. Now, here's the interesting part, which I was talking about, and Namrata, you might want to hear. In GE, he was recognized globally as a growth leader in inclusiveness, right? And inclusion is one of the strongest use cases for ONA as well. So I was deeply happy that another connection that we have discovered with Rohit and ONA and inclusion. So again, welcome to you, Rohit.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yep. And I know both of you have been very busy. In fact, both of them have been traveling. Kamaljeet has told me very strictly she has a hard stop at 5:30, right? And I'm surely going to respect that. But again, thank you very much, guys, for coming in here. And by the way, just a warning to everybody, I'm going to make sure that this is an extremely serious meeting. We are going to talk to the point, no garbage. Of course, I'm kidding. So whenever you come to an OD alternatives conversation, right, you can be sure that we will make it deep, we will make it sincere, but it's never going to be serious. So we're just going to have a free-flowing conversation. Don't worry. This is going to be a very relaxed 1.5 hours. So yeah, let's just get started. So Rohit, Kamaljeet, how have you been doing? What have been some of the expected hardships and unexpected blessings of the pandemic for you?
You want to go first, Kamaljeet?
Sure. I think many of us would be grappling right now, about our workplace policies, how to get in people back, how do you get them connected? And when we're talking about people connections, I think since we're talking about ONA, this whole tool actually really helped us to actually understand that how are people connecting. And if I were to now relate with the pandemic on the hindsight, I would say that the tools gave us really good insights. And through this pandemic, interventions, we could actually see how people are connecting and what are some of the new interventions we really need to do to make sure that people, how they're connecting, what they need to do to connect more, and what are some of the real insights that are these people are doing while they are away, working on the virtual mode. So I think that's keeping us busy. Many of us are grappling with the fatigue and the burnout our employees are having, including ourselves, over virtual and work. So this is something which I think the HR fraternity is busy with. But besides that, I think one of the most important aspect for any HR leader is to ensure that we have the right talent in the right box, and we have the right people on board, and make sure that these right people and the best talent are interacting and contributing most effectively to the business. I think this is what I like to say are focus areas, Vijay, at this point of time.
Got it. And on a personal note, I hope things are not that stressful. Have you gotten any chances to make the best out of the whole work from home and the pandemic situation?
Yes, got COVID twice,
Oh man.
but now got myself vaccinated.
Okay.
I think there were many skills that I adopted. I wasn't as lucky as Santosh as I wasn't able to go to Kurg and have a very nice work from home, but I think could manage to bring up some skills, along with my 10-year-old child. So I think that was something which had its own advantage, and I'm sure many of us would be working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I was also thinking the same, because we were spending more time at home. My wife realized that yeah, our home needs some more work, and
Correct.
suddenly both of us got a gardening habit and whatnot.
Correct. Same here. So
So
I have lovely roses coming
yeah,
up, blooming. So that's the new skill, and many more, I think. Yeah.
yeah, another example of how the environment affects us individuals, right? Rohit, how have you been? I know some of your secrets, but I will let you share.
No, I think the pandemic, I mean, the last 18 months, I think really I haven't experienced anything like this in my career, both personally and professionally. Uh, I think the last few months, the second wave was very personal. I think it was very, very personal. The value of life, the value of living your life on your terms, the value of respecting health, even more than ever, uh, has come out strongly. As I was leading the task force that was really managing the pandemic challenges at PTM at that point of time, while I was having COVID myself. But fortunately, it was very, very mild. I had both my vaccines, so it was very mild for me. But I think just seeing the people around oneself, their parents-in-laws, their brothers, sisters, employees themselves, just passing away, in an instance, in just a moment. Like, they were just had a call with them, like 1 week back and the next week they're gone. I think it was very personal. And I think it touched almost everybody I know. It touched somebody much more personally than the first wave. So I think for me, the value of life, like I said, living it on your own terms, and value of relationships that matter. I think those were elements that came out strong. Of course, work. I saw employees being the kind of productivity rates, and I think it will be on many of your minds. The productivity rates actually went up drastically. The fear that people may have had, hey, work from home consistently, what people are going to do, how will we make, will they really be at work? I saw no trace of that. In fact, all my friends across industry, as I was various panel discussions, they all said how selfless employees have been, in terms of giving so much of their personal time, in terms of work. So I think productivity is very high. We did very well, extremely well in the pandemic as well. I think many companies have done well as well, and a very different way of working, a very different way of leadership, of leading people. I think that in some ways, which nobody has taught anybody, kind of came up during these times. So I think extremely interesting. I'm waiting for this pandemic to go away. I'm somebody who loves going to office, and I think a few months I should be back to one as well. So I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to the session, and like Santosh and Vijay mentioned, I think for me as well, the ODA was the first one that I've done. It's not that I'm an expert on this. I think a little bit of experiences of what we had as I implement this, I'll share with you. I'd love to hear, learn from the people on this panel as well who've joined the Zoom call in terms of your experiences, and really have a very candid chat on what our expectations was as we went into this as an experiment and what we came out with. So really look forward to a very open conversation. Anything goes, any questions go, and I'm very happy to share our experiences with this with this intervention.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rohit. And when you said that nothing could be truer, because yeah, this pandemic, of course, it's not something that you would want again, but it has revealed so many things, that one of the biggest was things that would have otherwise taken 5-6 years got done in 5-6 months, right? So it's just a testament to the fact that if at an intent level we are all aligned, then we can do a lot of things much more faster. Otherwise, you need all kinds of strategies and processes in place to just force people to do what they might not have buy-in for. But yeah, and the other thing that you mentioned, the suffering, etc., quite some deep existential questions, right? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Where am I going in life? All these kinds of questions have come up again and again, and that sometimes makes me sad and thrilled at the same time, because somewhere I feel after this pandemic has passed, there's going to be a lot of change at a very deep level that will happen, right? And it's going to be unexpected change in a good way, an evolution rather than change. But yeah, we all need to see what it will be. And on that note, I thought also let's get a sense of the room. So if you have not done it already, I would request everybody to check your name, right click on your tile on the right hand top and rename yourself to your actual name, because in the past we have had a laptop 1, iPhone 12, Wonder Woman, and Naughty Nidhi and whatnot. So you might just want to rename yourself, so whenever you chat or interact, we are able to know who's speaking. I also just wanted to get a sense of where all of us have come from. So maybe you are from the learning function, or maybe from the HR function, or maybe from another function, another business function. So how many of us are from the learning function? Maybe you could just put it in the chat, say that, yeah, I'm from the learning function. Just wanted to get a sense. Okay. 2.
Most of them learning.
Most of them, yeah. Got it.
Awesome. So I think it's a very interesting session for all the people from the learning and development team. Yeah.
Correct. Okay. And how many from HR, not in L&D? HR. Okay. 3. 7, 8. Good.
I think it's quite balanced, yeah.
Yeah, quite balanced. Quite balanced. Good. Great, great, great. And anybody from not these two functions, HR or L&D? Ajay, yes, operations, of course.
I said, Vijay, all the important
Yes.
people generally come from these two functions.
Yes. Okay, and we have operations. Fantastic. I think the operations folks are also going to have a lot of takeaways from here because it will actually show you how the real-time operation and the real operations work. And I also just wanted to get a sense, maybe Rohit, Kamal, I thought this will be useful. If the audience could just type in, what made you come here? What were you looking for? Maybe it was introduction to ONA or some other curiosity or some other question that you had. Anything goes. Just if you can type in, and we'll just get a sense of where we are at in this room. What were you hoping to get from this webinar today? Curiosity, deeper understanding. Got it. Real life application of ONA. Good. Real time. Want to know what ONA is. Curious about ONA. How it's getting implemented. Okay. Got it. Understanding of ONA in applications. Cool. Okay. Got it. So I'm getting a sense that most of us are here to understand ONA, understand the actual real life applications, and maybe even the implementation of it. Curious, yeah, relevance during this time in this context. Got it. Got it. So some use cases perhaps.
Vijay,
Cool.
business case and ROI.
Business case and ROI. Got it.
Sorry,
Got
I
it.
can't type. I'm on Bluetooth in my car.
Ah, okay. Got it, Swapnil. Sure. Okay, great. And as we go through the conversation, if you happen to have some questions, please make a note of them. Towards the end, I'll open the floor for questions. You can type your questions in the chat and I'll take them and pass it on to the guests as well. So yes, let us begin. I was also thinking maybe Rohit, Kamal, and the participants would quick introduction to ONA, a conceptual introduction to ONA help, right? And I'll perhaps just spend a few minutes on that, and that will set the context on the further conversation, right?
I think that would be very helpful, Vijay. I think just to since even the team also on the group also wants to get a deeper understanding of it. I know for me it was very new,
Yes.
very new, and I think thanks to Santosh and you, the hours that you spent with me and my team, we really, I think we really maximized the intervention. You know, over the period of the 3 to 6 months, we intervened, we did it, and then we executed. So I think a brief overview and then jumping into some more experiences may be helpful.
Absolutely. So why don't I just, and like I said, I will make sure that I don't drown you all in jargon and the technical details of ONA. My intent is going to be to give you a feel, a visual feel of what that fundamental difference was that I was talking about, and a first-hand experience of why we say that ONA will give you a more real picture of your organization. So let me quickly show you something. Yeah, so you might have heard this phrase a lot, that ONA is used to reveal the informal networks in the organization, right? And all of us know that we have the organization on paper, right? The org chart and everything's thing is hunky-dory. But we all know that actual work gets done based on our informal relationships, who knows whom, who we know is going to be a bigger hurdle, who we know is going to be the path of least resistance. And all this gets evolved, developed informally. So if, let us say you have a formal network like this, right? Now here, if you look at it quickly, Amit might sound a little insignificant. But if there was some way of mapping the informal networks, suddenly it becomes clear that Amit really holds a very key position in the whole network, right? And there are some people who are senior, but not might be as powerful, as influential. Now, this is a view that the org chart can never give you. Of course, McKinsey, Harvard have been talking since the longest of times that how the power of informal networks has to be mined by organizations. But let me show you the more interesting thing, right? And this is where I'm going to try and give you the actual visual experience of the power of ONA, right? Let's imagine you have two organizations having same number of people. Absolutely no difference, org A, org B. And I ask you this question, which one has more engagement? Right now, what's the conventional way? Right, conventional way would be, let's do an engagement survey which is based on perception. You will ask each person, how do you feel supported, etc. So we will do a perception based survey and we will get certain perceptions, right? I feel bad, okay, good, engaged, disengaged, and we will then aggregate all these perceptions and form a aggregated perception, right? We feel something in between, something better. And this is what you got to work with, perception based conclusions. Whereas, what if there was a way that instead of asking for perceptions, what if there was a data based scientific approach to directly have a first hand view of the engagement in the organization? What if we could ask simple questions? Hey, who do you reach out to get help on work? Who do you reach out to discuss some personal challenges in life? Who do you want to reach out to if you want to understand what's going on in the organizations, right? Just this simple factual questions, and based on the names that people put for each other, we map the entire network, right? Now, if I ask you, and you can type in without any perception survey, right? If I ask you which organization shows more engagement on the ground, what would you say, org A or org B?
Everybody will get 100 marks.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I told you, everybody is getting 100.
And it becomes so obvious, right? And this is data based, and there is no further proof needed because we are actually mapping the interactions. Similarly, if I had asked, this is a common thing, right? And in any organization that I've gone, I've heard this in some way or shape. Our departments work in silos, we don't talk to each other, blah, blah, blah. But if we say, okay, but what does the data say? Is there any data to show how good, bad, ugly, worse we are? No, there is no data. It's just gut feel, right? And then we do collaboration based interventions, etc., etc. But again, let us see, same org A, org B, departments distribution seems to be exactly same. But again, if I map the networks, again, it becomes obvious that in org A, there are really silos, and in org B, there are not. It also becomes very obvious where might you need to intervene in org A or org B to actually get the biggest ROI or the biggest returns on your efforts. Inclusion, diversity is another case, right? This is beautiful, by the way, and one of the most powerful cases, right? So both of these, the blue are the men and the pink are the women, both of them diversity wise, if you had measured them, they would score equal. But as soon as I start mapping the relationships, can you see something obvious? The diversity is the same, but the inclusion is very different, right? And one might think that, oh, if engagement is high and people are talking to each other, that automatically means inclusion is also high. Not necessarily. Let's look at another pattern, right? So here, engagement is very high, but as you can see, the men are talking among themselves, the women are talking about themselves. So there is no gender inclusion. They are not interacting with each other. So this is something ONA can throw up as scientific data. And another quick thing would be, if you have a new platform, a new initiative coming in, and you want to get buy-in from your employees, right? How would you usually do it? Perhaps you would get engagement from your unit heads, and they send a mail saying, hey, let's participate and I encourage you to do something, and then use the carrot and the stick approach to percolate all that downwards. But if you could get this view of the network, you quickly know that, yeah, these might be the hubs and these might be your bridges who connect all these groups. And if you can reach out to these folks, maybe they could be those 10% who can share that information to the 80% of the network. So ONA actually helps identify those influencers, etc. So that is just a quick overview that I wanted to give you on how ONA actually helps to get what is really happening on the ground, right? And as you can see, it focuses less on the individual and focuses more on how those individuals interact as a group. And that is the fundamental difference of how we look, right? So yeah, I hope that is helpful. And with that, just let me now move on to our conversation with our guests today. So before I actually get into the deeper stuff, Rohit, Kamal, I just wanted to ask you, since ONA is something new and you were bold enough to try something new, what was your overall experience? What did you expect? What actually happened? How was your overall experience with the whole ONA study?
So I'll, Rohit, allow me
Sure.
if I can go
Yeah,
next.
please.
Yeah.
After you.
So, I really like this word Auglens, and I would like to talk about, this name Auglens. Actually, this helped us to actually use a lens beyond the org structure. When I say this, one would, and like you rightly explained, Vijay, that one would really look at a hierarchy, and sometimes you would see that power and influence would sit up in roles which are up the ladder. I think this tool actually gave us very interesting insights that help us to actually use a lens to see beyond the structure. When I say that, we are a widely distributed workforce, and this tool gave us very good insights as to see how our people among the geographies, among the locations are interacting. It gave us data insights. This is one of the tools which helped us to kind of talk with data. Like you said, rather than perception, we always thought that we are 75-80% there. But this tool actually surprised us. There were names, and because you guys have done this for us, there were names that really surprised, and there were people who were holding critical positions, have a very good network, versus people who were holding critical positions did not have a great network. It helped us give different insights. Who are our key influencers, who are playing a very, very important role in this whole networking and communication. It also gave a sense of us as to how the organization is connected. I'm sure I don't want to go into the details of central nodes, but there were people who were attached to almost like all aspects of the organization. So are we leveraging their power of these connections enough? So I would say it's the word for me would be very, very insightful. We were also surprised. It was very, very data driven. It helped us to know. And when we started doing this, I think when we spoke to Santosh, we spoke to you, we wanted to do something on the cultural piece. And this whole connection gave us a lot of insight and as to how, from a cultural perspective, the organization is operating. So this is what, in a nutshell, I would say about our experience. Very insightful, surprised, very exciting. And of course, as we go in, we'll talk about how we've used this. What are some of the things that came in as insights? But this is, at this juncture, I would say our experience was.
Got it. Got it. Thanks, Kamal. Yes, Rohit. How was your overall experience?
No, thanks. Thanks for sharing that, Kamal. I think very interesting in terms of how you stayed in the company. For us, also, it was. I mean, the organization I leave, thanks to Santosh and Vijay, we leveraged it for. The organization had never done any culture survey. So, in fact, this was the first culture intervention that actually happened there. And it was a mixed bag. It was a mixed bag in a certain sense, because in the ONA, unlike other culture surveys, it is definitely not anonymous, right? That's the first big difference, from with this, because people have to mention, who is in their network, and in that network, not just about one org chart, but in the network in different situations. So, for example, we went into the networks like the work network, the expertise network, the ideation or the innovation network, the trust network, the decision-making network, the energy network, and the awareness network. So a whole bunch of questions specifically focused around each one of these networks. And you would specifically ask for names, that you would go to as a participant in the survey for help and assistance on each one of these networks. So it's definitely is not anonymous, right? So and that's how you get the names, which come out as fulcrum leaders, or thought leaders, or influential leaders, because they're given the names of those people. So I think for us, the first one was, will people participate? And I was very upfront saying that this is not anonymous, right? At the same time, we had a lot of communication, around the fact about why this is useful for us. So I think that element of change management is important in a survey like this, because again, the perception could be, if I'm not in the network, the company will view me as somebody who's not important enough, or so on, right? So we had to allay all those fears. So, but as a HR leader, I the CEO, got context to all the elements. So that's I think point number one. We did it for across 1,000 employees, across the world. So it was across countries, across all departments. So we kind of made it pretty broad spread. We also assessed networks in addition to this, our work, expertise, idea, trust, and so on. People who were less than 1 year in the company, what did they feel? What did they experience? People who were between 1 and 2 years in the company, what did they feel? What did they experience? And people who were above 2 years, what did they feel? And there's a hypothesis that I had, and that's why I kind of said that I do want to get data around how people less than 1 year, 1 to 2 years, and over 2 years feel in the company, and also about women. How from a diversity perspective, we also ran a cut around what do women feel about working here, and who is their network. And you got some very interesting data around how all these pockets felt, about working in the company. There were some network leaders which are very obvious, you would see them every day. But I think it unearthed for us many other network leaders, across the 6-7 spectrum of relationships that we explored, which we got to who we got to know. And then we leverage these leaders, these bunch of leaders, for further seeding, because we had pockets where in the chart that Vijay showed, that were islands, that were not as collaborative, that were pretty much working in silos, and of course a lot of the context. Then we could actually use these names to intervene. Specific intervention that we made over the next 3 to 6 months following this survey, on how do we get leaders to teach leaders, how do we get leaders to be more visible, and that came out as as an offshoot of this intervention.
Got it. Thanks, Rohit. And just for the benefit of the audience, I know Rohit and Kamal both mentioned culture, right? And Rohit talked about the various networks. Right? Just to add to it, what we actually mean here is, I was showing you all the networks, right? Just imagine if we have asked questions like, hey, who do you reach out to discuss your professional challenges? Essentially, I'm mapping the trust network. Who do you reach out to brainstorm about a new idea you have? I'm essentially mapping the idea network, right? And now just imagine that when I map the work network, I get a very dense interconnected network. And when I map the trust network, I get a very sparse, disconnected, unconnected network for the same set of people. this data is your best evidence of what is going on actually on the ground, as opposed to the perceptions that you might have. And that is where the whole data-based insights piece comes in ONA for measuring such erstwhile intangible things like trust, like ideation, etc.
I'll just add here,
Yes, ma'am.
to what Rohit and Vijay you've added. I think what I really liked about this survey was, like Rohit was talking about different cuts. You can actually contextualize this to your need. So while Rohit talked about diversity, he talked about different, geographies. We also did very similar cuts. We also wanted to get to know how our, top talent, in those critical boxes, how are they interacting with the rest of the organizations? How are our executive team interacting with the larger organization? How does diversity play an important role? What happens if there are geographies that come in perspective, locations come in perspective? Does that dynamics change? And like I said before, we were surprised. It was very insightful, and that really helped us to kind of understand what kind of networks. We've always got to know formal networks, and you in the physical space, you were always used to see those informal networks, which were very visible. I think this survey, like again, through this lens, we could really see through what are some of the informal networks that are flowing beyond which we could actually see from what was being seen in a usual workplace context. So this is very important, and this was the insight. I would say this is very, very insightful from this survey.
Just to add here for everybody's thing, they had already identified X number of high potential. So what we were curious, among other insights that we were anyway giving, was to use it as a study to see whether real high potential employees, whether their network will look different than another employee. Is there a connection between what we call the social capital and what we call the human capital? And what we found in that particular study is that the connections where they had more reach and they had more influence and they had more power. At least 80% of them whom you had chosen, right? And we were also able to say that you can have somebody who has high human capital, but not necessarily have the social capital. Then she mentioned something beautiful. You can look at your context and you might decide this individual doesn't have that level of connections, but he or she is in a function where that's not required. That knowledge the client has.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And I cannot emphasize too much, because even Rohit alluded to that very nuanced point, right? Because you cannot really take these observations at face value. They have to be contextualized. And that is an integral part of the exercise. The network study shows you indicators of where you might need to start looking by providing you data. And that, combined with the client's organizational context, is what tells us whether is this something worth intervening in or not. So that's one of the most important things. And when Santosh, you talked about the whole Hypot thing, it actually reminded me of one of my earlier organizations, right? Whenever the promotion discussions used to happen, there was this very important question people used to ask, that okay, both of these people have all the individual checkboxes ticked, but do they have support of the group? Right. And now today I understand they were essentially talking about social capital, because I'm sure all of us have seen these people who individually might be the best, but if you promote them, the support of the people that they need to make them successful at the next level might not be present, right? But if a person has all the support, upward, downward, peer level, then he or she would succeed in that role. So ONA gives us a way to also supplement that human capital metric with a social capital metric, that hey, do these people have the essential social capital?
I just want to add that to understand this concept of social capital, all of us need to just reflect for 20 seconds. How did you got this particular job that you are in? Then you will realize it came through the network. It's through your social connections. It's never a complete formal process, right? Somebody in the network connected, somebody here told, somebody there. So every opportunity and resources that we get in life, it's not just because we are the smartest person, but it's also because we are embedded in certain networks, which we call the social capital of us, that give us this information, which of course, with our smartness, we are able to turn that around. So it's a dance between the social capital and the human capital, never one thing alone. And you may have a great social capital, you know, a social butterfly whom you don't want to hire. Because you know that everybody knows that person. Because I don't want to hire because that person doesn't have any substance. Sometimes you say that's the human capital. There are 1,000 people in this world who have substance, who possibly is not getting a good job because we don't have a way to reach out to them. Because most of the stuff after a certain level, it comes through our networks and connections, and somebody talks about you, someone heard about you, someone mentioned about you, someone mentioned about an opportunity. So that's a complete, what I call a blind spot, the way we look at. We always look at, hey, organization is a bunch of smart individuals. We forget the relationship they have between them. So that's a focus in this case. Yeah.
I would also draw a parallel between 360 assessments in a certain sense and ONA. Well, they're two very different instruments, but in a 360 also, you have an employee who gets an assessment with the peers, with subordinates, with stakeholders, and comes out as, hey, on different traits, how is the person functioning? Always never know, hey, would you use a 360 for performance assessment or for developmental reasons? And I have always propagated that to get the trust in, use it for personal development, for potential, for making a person stronger, rather than assessing a person who's got a maybe negative 360, saying this person is a disaster. In general, when you look at a general use of a tool. Similarly, an ONA also, because let's say you're talking about in my case about 1,000 leaders, and maybe out of 1,000 leaders, maybe 20-25 get highlighted as people who are very strong in their networks, right? Whatever. It doesn't mean the next 25 or the next 50 are disasters because they aren't there. It's about saying that, okay, if your organization is already connected, you already have a network organization, then how do you leverage those 200 people who are maybe a part of the network? If your organization out of 1,000 people has only 25 people and who are on a network, then how do you accelerate more networks over there? Because that's where in some ways the results can make somebody fearful. It needs courage. I put this way, it needs courage for the management to also go in for an ONA. The same way it needs courage for a person to say, I'm fine doing my 360 assessment or my new manager simulation. So I think the organization, and this is all the L&D leaders who normally are doing interventions, it's about how do you position this? Somebody with a very sharp incisiveness would say, hey, I can find out from this who are my top players, who are my bottom players, or who are not so strong. But I think as you launch this, my personal opinion is that you would make a lot of people nervous, if you do it that way. So I would always go in a perspective of saying that do it from a developmental perspective, and how can you make the organization more networked, more stronger, get insights and use those insights to have many more stars around you than make it judgmental. As a tool. That'd just be my thought. And that's why the parallel between a 360 and and the ONA.
Beautiful one. And I also thought, past we experienced, Rohit, rather than sometimes we use the word organization, whenever someone who initiated this was a high social capital in his or her organization, they're able to get this done fast. The person who wanting to do this have less social capital, because social capital is all about reach, influence, and power. So that's also a clear signal to us that whenever somebody inside an organization initiated that, who has a good social capital, they were able to get the organization rally behind. And whenever somebody tried to do this, who didn't have a good social capital in their own organization, they felt that, yeah, it's so difficult. We're not even ready now. So it's a great point. Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. And thanks, Rohit, for bringing in that positioning aspect, right? Because that's very important. And this is, like I said, a very fundamentally new way of looking at things. So needs the correct positioning so that people do not take it in the wrong context. Before I go ahead with my next question, I just wanted to quickly repeat what we went through, right? We talked about culture and how we map not only one network, but a 7-dimensional network related to trust, knowledge, work, etc., etc. And that gives us a 7-dimensional view of how people are interacting. We talked how ONA findings are supposed to be seen in context, and that makes sure that the ONA findings by themselves do not bias us or our conclusions. So the context of the organization and the ONA findings are seen in tandem. We discussed some of the use cases, like how it can supplement high potential journeys by also assessing their social capital in addition to their human capital, which we have been doing since years together. We talked about inclusion. We also Kamalji touched upon how we can aggregate the whole network findings to see not only how individuals, but how departments are interacting with each other, how geographies are interacting with each other, how locations are interacting with each other. So this is all what we had a look. And now I just had a question. I think, Rohit, I think you touched upon it for a bit. Could you both tell us more on how ONA might help us to make our new hire integration more effective? I know, Rohit, you just touched upon it when you talked about that 1 year versus, yeah. Could you say a little bit more on that?
Sure. Some of the insights that came out for us, and that the new hire was one part of it. We saw a huge gap between new joiners and old timers. So, I mean, it was kind of like people with less than 1 year and 1 to 2 years were seeking out, were like thirsty for meeting people who are more than 2 years, more than 3 years, to get information from them. So they were always seeking them out. And people with more than 2 years had no interest whatsoever in reaching out to the people who were there, for less than 2 years, because they already knew how work was happening, right? And this reflected in our attrition. About 70% of my attrition in the company I was working for, where we did this, was between 1 to 2 years. Was within 2 years. So 70% of people of my total attrition, 70% was people who left, who were in the company for less than 2 years. Equally spread between less than 1 year and 1 to 2 years. So that was pretty obvious, and that was the hypothesis, and that's why I really went for this. And the data was stark, because when we share this with the entire organization, that hey, this is what is happening. We are completely neglecting, in a certain sense, people who are relatively new in the organization, who want to talk to people who have tribal knowledge about how the company functions, and was something that came out. And so what this led to was a lot of commitment from people who are a part of the network and people who are experienced, as we launched the initiative on Leaders Teach Leaders, where we had elements on the buddy program when people join us, on the new joiner orientation, where we had now people taking sessions, formally structured sessions, and we recorded those sessions as well. We launched a high potential program again, where again we had people who were a lot of tribal knowledge, taking sessions or interacting, with people who are, who are high potentials. And many of those kinds of, knowledge sessions that, be it on product or technology and so on, that got started taking from people who are, who've been in the company longer. And then we also started a kind of feedback mechanisms where we launched an initiative where people could give feedback on all leaders, irrespective of their own irrespective of their own kind of hierarchical challenge. And we also launched that so that again from a developmental standpoint, people could get to know about their influence on like others in the organization. Sometimes a lot of distance also comes in between the senior leadership and the rest of the organization, and we saw that coming through as well. So I think a lot of interesting information, which I think any cultural survey could also have got. But the additional part with this was we got to know, people who could be catalysts for driving change, or people or departments that could be a hurdle, where this thing, wasn't happening. So both ways, I think it helped new joiners, and it also helped a lot of leaders who just a blind spot. I don't think many of them realized that this was happening, but I think it was a very natural element that they just weren't reaching out to or helping in a certain sense the new joiners who are joining us.
Thank you, Rohit. Yes, Kamal, please.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Rohit has said. I think many of the similar insights came in, where there was I would say a gap in communication between the new hires and the old timers. I think many of the initiatives which Rohit has said, one of the things that came in was that we consciously started aligning the new joiners to the mentors or the buddies who had a very, very well network in the company, and they were like influencers, had very, very good opinion, so that they are not lost in this whole network. Imagine a scenario where you're attaching somebody with somebody who's anyways disconnected. So I think these initiatives, is something which we've started integrating it, more cautiously with our new joiners. Apart from what Rohit said, in terms of new joiner integration, having those sessions, having feedbacks from them. But I think getting them aligned in the few initial days with a mentor or a buddy who's very, very well connected, who's an influencer, was very, very important for this person to tap the social capital. So that this person is connected to the larger organization in a much faster way. So this was one of the things I think that came in useful for us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kamal. And the other reason I also felt that we should perhaps spend a little time on this is because in today's environment, in that hybrid environment, right, where the new joinees might not even have seen the campus for months together, this becomes very important because this is the only way you know how much people are actually interacting with each other, regardless of the virtual induction programs, etc., that we have. And the second one, why I personally particularly liked this particular end-to-end case was, like I think Rohit, you mentioned at the beginning that it's good to start with some hypothesis. So be it Kamal, be it Rohit, be it any HR leader, we usually have a gut feel of what's going on, right? What's not working, what's working. The trouble is making the business case for it. Okay, so I'm sure Rohit knew that there was something going on in the tenured first year tenure or more tenured people. But the question was, how do we prove or disprove this hypothesis? And that's where ONA comes in with its scientific approach that, yeah, what if we show you data that this particular group of people is reaching out to the second group, but there is no reciprocal interaction. The second group, by the way, interacts a lot between themselves, but it does not interact with the first group, right? So these are undeniable data centric insights which tell us that, yeah, our hypothesis is actually true. By the way, the hypothesis could be wrong as well, right? But if the hypothesis is true, that on the back of that, we can build a business case for management, for our leaders to say that, hey, we need to do some conscious investment here. And that is where, Rohit, again, thanks for sharing the end-to-end, the initiatives that you launched. And Kamal, you mentioned some of the initiatives that you launched. That once we see the need of these interventions, now it becomes easier where to intervene, where are my top priority items, how do I track if things are indeed improving or not. So the entire end-to-end exercise becomes very data centric. Thanks again for sharing that. And I was just curious. So we talked about many possible use cases, but if I were to ask you personally, for you, which one did you find the most useful for you?
So I was gonna talk about this. I think one of the use cases was about how do you enhance collaboration
Mm.
in the organization, and you've heard this. It's a very generic statement that we need to enhance collaboration. Well, everybody collaborates on the face of it. So how do you actually do it? Everybody is very happy, and we're all collaborating with each other. I think this data, this survey threw a lot of, like I said, insights and real life data into, like Rohit said, about people, what's the network, how they are collaborating amongst the peers, the juniors, the hierarchy. So I think this data really helped us to see how people are connected and disconnected. And through this data, I think we've been able to formalize engagement or communication channels whereby people have come together to communicate more or probably collaborate more. So I think just by saying that collaboration is an issue without undermining that what's the real issue, we found that there were functions who were interacting less. We found that there were people amongst the teams who were interacting less. So I think this data actually helped us to kind of go back and do interventions that demanded people to communicate and connect enough to make sure that collaboration at workplace happens. So this is one use case I would like to say. And of course, there were certain interventions, at a very macro level. I can share that we had cases where we felt that people across the geographies are not connecting, and it's become an island. I think that's the word Rohit used at the beginning. Those were certain interventions we made to make sure that enough support, enough communication through structured interventions is happening between geographies so that it's business enabling and not stifling. These are two use cases I'd like to talk about, Vijay.
Thank you.
Hey,
And yes,
I
yes.
just wanted to answer Manjula's question, thinking that it could be a question in many people's minds. Does it really create a surprise, or is it usual? So I just wanted to answer it generally. Then if you guys wanted to pitch in from your experience. So Manjula and everybody who asks this question, many a time a close group. So Manjula knows who's her friends are, whom she reach out. Manjula even know a little bit about her friends. But the moment it goes to, if Manjula knows her friends, she doesn't know. The moment it become a big data, in a pocket, somebody might know. Or at an organization level, we might know somebody who has that kind of an opportunity to have visibility. So in my team, I might know, okay, this guy is more connected. But the moment I go out of that, I wouldn't know. There is no way to figure that out. So that's one way to look at it. So when we say the usual suspects are either two. One, I know them, he's or she is in my close vicinity. Two, no, is extremely popular in an ONA term. We call it a local influencer and the whole. So a simple example will be, which will be the most read newspaper in India? So I'll tell you what is a local influencer. Give me which is the most read newspaper in India? Make a wild guess.
This is Meenal here. It must be Navbharat Times or local language paper, I guess.
Yeah, it is local. It's Malayalam Manorama.
Okay.
Now, but if I ask at a national level, what's the most important non-newspaper? That's not Malayalam Manorama. Malayalam Manorama, it's so popular there because the more news reading. So in network science, there is a local, that level you can connect. So that's one answer. Second is sometimes it does surprise people who are slightly far away, Manjula, because 8 months ago, if I ask who is the most powerful man in Reliance, people might not have thought about Manoj Modi. But at Oglands, our tool would have revealed he's one. Because he's not a networker, he doesn't go out, he doesn't socialize, but his connections are so powerful. So you do get surprise from that perspective on roles, functions where we wouldn't have an insight and they are not visible outside. Or you have surprises because you don't know that part of the organization. it's a great tool to have.
Yes.
Done.
And if there are more questions from the audience, I think this is a good time to start typing them in while we continue going ahead. Yes. If you have any questions.
Yeah. Any thought? Did you have any resistance from people? That was the second question. When people were, when the survey was launched, was there a resistance from people in terms of filling up or something? At least in Rohit's case, I didn't feel, because our when I was involved in the number of people who participated was very high. Both cases, I think. In your case also, yeah.
It was extremely high, and I think the trick to that is just be very transparent. See, again, unlike an anonymous survey, which is most surveys we do are anonymous surveys. You get a feel for what the element is. I mean, how many people have their best friend at work, or how many people feel about coming to work? I mean, it's just a whole. It's just something that is analyzed at a macro level, to whatever teams that you want to get to. Here, nobody can deny if those 5 people are standing out in the network with no connections. Those 5 people are standing out in the network with no connections. It's a reality. You can't debate that. If it's a key high potential, who you think is a high potential, and that person is on the periphery of the network, which means that the team is not really allowing that person to come in, to be a part of decision making or trust or so on. It is a reality. So I think the advantage of ONA is that because it's data, it's irrefutable, and it's there. And we had about 89 to 90% participation. So we had a pretty strong participation. And then we also shared results with everybody. So we had our own conference calls. So we were very transparent with the results, and we made sure that because 1,000 people participated, they got a 3-page summary at the end of the survey with what the results were. So it wasn't like something that's gone in there and it's kind of gone into a black box and nothing's happened. It was about, this is what the survey findings have been. This is what we'll be doing about it. So I think that loop of closing that element of closing the loop with the people who've taken it, it takes about half an hour to fill. So people who've done that, also got to know, through group discussions or through the team discussions, because we cover all departments, and an individual note sent to each one of them to say this is what the feedback result was. So I think we found, in fact, I would say, surprises, because people saw that they were not in the network, or they were not like relevant in a certain sense, and some people who found that they were irrelevant, and those were there. But I think the element was, how do we get this network stronger? So we really had no I had very limited resistance. I put it that way.
Yeah, and just to add from a steps perspective, right, Namrata, we also provide certain mail templates that can go out from the leaders inbox, from the overall inbox, what message can go out to the participants, etc., just as a help. Usually that works on how to position it. And of course, after the survey is done, which is a 10-15 minute exercise, later on, like Rohit said, we could build up reports according to the audience. So for senior management versus unit heads versus the whole mass audience, what can go to where? So we get to determine that. Yeah.
I'll just add 2 things. I think we had close to about 85% or so participation, which was I think was very good. I think the questions were very, very positive. I mean, there wasn't any element of any negative question. It was more like, whom are you looking towards, if it's a trust, or it's an expertise. So, I didn't feel that people found it or they were very resistant to it. I think there was curiosity because, like Rohit said, that generally, surveys are anonymous. And here you had to name people. So there was curiosity, there was excitement, but I didn't find it resistance. I like to add on to something which I think there was a question here. I think Abhishek or somebody would have raised. It's a very beautiful use case. We've used it in a limited capacity in retention. We used to do that informally when we used to feel that this person is connected, in terms of a network. But with this survey, we exactly know how the informal networks are flowing in, and we do use this in terms of retention or engagement of specific individuals when required. So I think that is something, another use case. I think there was a question about.
Yes,
This,
it was Abhishek's question. How can we
Yeah.
tap into for retention?
Correct.
Exactly. And I'll take the next question. Meenal, so Meenal is asking specifically on how the data was collected. Was it primary, survey-based, or secondary monitoring? So yeah, this is basically referred to as active ONA and passive ONA. So active ONA would mean asking those 6-7 questions that I have been talking about all this while, whereas passive ONA would involve monitoring the mail flows. And just to be clear, this does not involve looking into the content of the email, just who mailed whom and who messaged whom, right? Just those header information. All these insights that we are talking about, Meenal, was necessarily active. So it was primary survey related, right? And as we go ahead, we will have, so the advantage of a passive ONA would be you can monitor real time, but from a context and richness perspective, nothing beats active ONA, because you know why someone is reaching out to another person. Versus emails, you might be able to know that Meenal has mailed Vijayaraj 50 times in a day, but whether it is because Vijayaraj is a useless fellow who needs 50 follow-ups, or is it because Vijayaraj is really an important person in the organization? That context might not be provided by passive. But the big advantage is it can be used to monitor real time in the background. Yeah, so I hope, Meenal, that answers your question. And I'm just looking at the other questions. Pulkit is asking what kinds of organizations benefited from ONA. Could you please share the common applications for ONA? I'll just answer the first one. So Pulkit, we have done ONA across any sector, anywhere where a huge number of people are coming to work together. ONA would have applications, and as far as we are concerned, we have done it for financial services, we have done it for pharma, we have done it for retail, and a host of industries. Common applications, we discussed some, like new hire integration or culture or engagement, inclusion, retention. Rohit, Kamal, if you wanted to add any other applications that you could think of, it would be great.
Succession planning, and in succession planning is something that you can use, right? Because people who are the center of networks, see, again, you'll have some people who are doing well, and just being in the center of the network doesn't mean the person is high potential. It's just the person is, people are going to the person for something, right? So if you have both a person who you think is high potential and center of the network, then you can say this person can do this kind of a job and so on. So you have that in terms of retention. A question on retention, if you have one of your high potentials or like on the periphery, means that, hey, you want the person to stay, but the person obviously, unknown to you or known to you, either ways, is not feeling included, because nobody is going to that, reaching out to the person for stuff, and the person also is on the periphery. So that again, how do you get that person in? Can be a method for you to actually retain some of your high potential. And then from a culture perspective, like I said, we use leaders teach leaders as a culture mechanism to say that, can we have leaders being more visible, being more interested, in others' lives, in sharing their teachable points of view, in the larger audience, so that people can reach out to them as well. When they are, when you have informal discussions, it's not a review or a business meeting. Somebody's talking about a certain perspective or a certain learning or a certain or a certain session. People also reach out to them afterwards. So certainly we leveraged it for shaping a culture that way. So I think a lot depends on you in terms of once you have the data, like in any cultural intervention, in terms of how you want to use this.
Absolutely. And I'm going to combine two next questions. Manjula was asking what might be the actual steps, and Tanvi was asking, are there any unconscious biases that we should be aware of at the start of ONA? Right. So here's the good news. From a steps perspective, it's very simple. Okay, step one, the client organizations provides us the data of the participants. When I say the data, it's basically the name, email, etc., some basic information, so that the survey link can be sent to them. We work with you to figure out what are some of the mailers how can you do the positioning. We provide you some templates which you can use, tweak to your benefit, and whatever you say in the context of your organization goes, right? So an email goes out from your HR leader saying, hey, this is why we are doing this, this is when we are doing this, and we invite your participation. Then the actual survey happens. It's 6-7 questions, not more than 10 minutes. When I now coming to Tanvi's question of unconscious biases, the good news is, like I said, the questions are very factual. So we don't ask who do you feel is the best person for this or like that. The questions are very straightforward. Who would you go to if you wanted to discuss a professional challenge? Who do you go to discuss if you have some new idea? Who do you go to know what's happening in the organization, right? So very factual, very straightforward, positive questions. So nothing where it involves perception or bias or anything like that. So
but
hence,
Vijay, I think just, I'm sorry, but just the other caveat is that you can have unconscious biases in the results.
in the yes,
Results, and the questions are very open-ended and very transparent, as even Kamaljeet shared. But let's say again, let's say in the trust equation, there are questions on who do you go to when you're facing a personal issue at work or whatever else. And let's say this one person pops up and the manager says, hey, this person is vela all the time. He just gossiping all the time. So no wonder is at the center of this that people are going to him, and maybe he's propagating dissatisfaction, whatever. Now that can be an unconscious bias, that the person can say, work, innovation, something, hey, that's something that's important, but trust, relationship, career discussions or whatever else, they go to them just for faffing. But the importance of water cooler conversations, and that element in a informal org chart or informal network, I think as critical as the formal power organization chart as well. And I think that's why that's why the HR leader or somebody who's doing the intervention, one has to be very conscious that these on the observations, these unconscious biases as the results don't come out. We take it as at factual value, and then maybe we probe further to find out more color to it.
absolutely.
And that's why the risk, that's why I'm telling you, it takes a lot of courage from an organization leadership standpoint to do this, because you are exposing, as the charts get shared, you are exposing leaders with names or employees with names, to the broader population. So I think the organization has to be committed, and the leaders have to be aware that so we actually, thanks to Santosh, we actually had multiple calls prior to the survey to let people know what this is about and what reports to expect. How will reports come out, sample reports. We shared that upfront with them so that they were aware about what this would be and how we would use it.
Thanks, Rohit. And I see one very interesting question which we did not touch upon. Meenal is asking, are there any inputs or comments on two areas, M&As and assessment of leadership development programs? M&A is very interesting area. Actually, Meenal, this is one of the biggest use cases because, as you know, in M&A, we are basically talking about two organizations coming together. So, and we have in fact done this for some of our clients in an M&A situation.
Two already.
Two already. So yes, what some of the quick benefits that I can show you. One, it will give you a real-time picture of the current interaction, which you can expect. You will see two networks, blobs. Each of them have very dense interaction between themselves with very thin connections in the center. Number two, next step, we could use this to answer questions like, hey, if we wanted these 3 or 4 groups to interact, who are the best bridges that we can reach out to? If we have to publicize, socialize certain initiatives that we are doing, who are the influencers in the trust network that we can get the buy-in from, so that they in turn can then spread the awareness or the decision to the rest of the network? If we want to take a big organizational decision, who are the main decision-making network influencers in the network who we need to reach out to? They might be formal or informal decision influencers. So many benefits, specifically in an M&A scenario. And assessment of leadership development programs, like Kamal also said earlier, it can be a good way to supplement, uh, in addition to the human capital, what is the social capital that these Hipots or these potential leaders have. And specifically for leaders, by the way, we have also done these exercises for smaller groups. So maybe just the CXO and CXO minus one are looking at better alignment. So we do a small network analysis for just that group. And that also many a times sheds very interesting insights. And I'm just looking at the other possible questions before we say bye-bye. Ajinkya is asking, I do understand the positive questions and clear templates. However, when you have an organization which is cross-cultural, multinationality, where different nationality responds with clear negative way, Ajinkya, I'm not sure what you mean by response to non-anonymous survey with clearly negative way. But what I would say is, in fact, in such cases where we have cross-cultural, multi-ethnicity, multinationality, this might be very useful because the 6 or 7 questions that we ask is applicable to any groups that come together. In
Or
fact,
at least we need to find out why do they
why
respond negatively.
exactly
So that's the problem to be solved.
problem to be
We
solved.
can possibly try with a small team and then spread it to the larger organization. Kamaljeet also is, I think, getting ready to pack.
Yes, ready to pack.
I'm
So-
sorry for this. Yeah, I have a flight back, and that's really taken 2 minutes of my, for being distracted on this. But I just want to say to all the, colleagues here that please feel free to be in touch in case you need more details or more specific on the use cases. I'll be happy to connect with you. And of course, I also take this opportunity, Santosh, to widen our social capital towards this network. So
Right.
Rohit, it's been great to connect with you. And
Likewise.
thank you, Santosh, for having me. I'm sorry to barge in towards this,
No
but I'll
worries.
have to rush for my flight.
No worries.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kamal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks a ton.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Kamal.
And yeah, before I take in more questions, I'm really feeling I would request all of you guys to indulge us, because we recently, and I think Santosh, you should share the story behind the video. We have recently created a 90-second video on Orglens, right? And we are
And
all
the
feeling
video
excited.
stories on social
Yeah,
capital.
stories on social capital.
We wanted to create a corporate video, which we have never done for ODA. Startups need to have a corporate video, it seems. So, okay, who creates corporate videos? Comes profiles of companies, and we are analyzing, talking, trying to, shortlist
quotes.
and all
Yeah.
formal stuff that we do in organization and waste our time. Then suddenly I asked, who in my network can help support? So Anupam Sen Gupta, who is not a corporate video maker, but was made feature films, who got award, say that, hey man, I'm not a corporate filmmaker, but I'll do your stuff. And where the other guys were telling some insane timelines, he said, I'll do it in 1 week for you. Then when we started making it, Anupam said, now I'm stuck because we need somebody to do voiceover. My voice won't work, so you got to find somebody who can. Then there are, of course, professional voiceovers. I write this on Facebook. I need help. I need somebody to give me voiceover. A lot of people said that I do this professionally. Somebody messaged me saying that, why the hell didn't you think about me? I can never forgive you for this. And that person was Rini Simon Khanna, whose voice we hear on Delhi Metro, Republic Day, and something which I could have never dreamt of. And she just scolded me and said that, why didn't you reach out to me? And she did it in 1 hour. So voiceover is there and the video is there. So it's just not about, this is how things get done. So we haven't just released it. We'll show you the whole social capital power sometimes help. And both refuse to take money. So that's the advantage of social capital sometimes. Otherwise, I did have to buy this footages where I spend money from here and there because we're just putting up something. So let's show that, Vijay.
Yes.
Yeah. You may be the first group that is seeing this.
Yeah.
Stanley Milgram, the social psychologist at Harvard, proved the concept of 6 degrees of separation in his 1960 experiment. We live in a connected world, and through the network of relationships, we get information and resources we need. This is true for organizations as well. Through these relationships, ideas, expertise, information, and strategies flow, making the organization adaptive, agile, and successful. Organizational Network Analytics, or ONA, shows us this map of relationships people have with each other, between departments, and across geographies. Something otherwise invisible, yet so important. OrgLens, using the network analysis, enables you to meet the challenges of this fast-paced world by showing you the hidden organization, the real organization behind your organization chart. When you have access to the network and relationships of your organization, you can, in an evidence-based manner, take action to increase engagement. The network data will enable your organization to integrate new joinees quickly by connecting them to people who are already deeply embedded in the network. The OrgLens platform-generated network data helps you in measuring inclusion that you could use effectively to increase inclusion. Seeing your organization's trusted networks, the silos, and the clusters helps you to increase collaboration, innovation, and agility. Given these insights and many more, OrgLens helps you tap into your human capital to its best potential by leveraging and increasing the social capital of your organization.
Yep. Yes, that is it. And again, we are bang on time. Again, thanks a lot, Rohit, for making it here and sharing your insights. And indeed, even I felt that when people who have actually done it on the ground, right, they share their perspectives, it's so much more richer and so much more real. So thanks again for making time and sharing your insights. Thank you to all the participants for making time, taking out 1.5 hours on a weekday. I really hope this was insightful, answered your questions. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us. I'm on LinkedIn. My email is vijayaraj@odalternatives.com, and we can take the discussion forward for any questions that you might have. So thank you again.
Know that while we were touched, little bit of this as a conceptual level, it's a broad topic. So that's okay. I strongly believe that any philosophy that you can put in a nutshell belongs there in the nutshell. Then it's not a philosophy. So this is actually a philosophy. It has depths, but what we need to understand that we don't need to understand the engines and how the engine function. We just need to learn how to drive. So what we need to learn is that it's an easy process. It's just 7 questions, take less than 10 minutes, and it can generate information that you can use who has a visibility and for what purpose you need to use. And that I think we have been able to shed some light. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much again, and we will see you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just us now.
Sudhi's
Yeah,
there.
we are done.
Amazing session.
Yeah, Sudhi. Yeah, Sudhi is here.
Hi, Sudhi. You become a part of the family now that you're not going. She left.
She's been co-opted.
No, she's still there.
I'll just.
Hi,
I'll
Sudhi.
just-
Can you hear us? No, she
No,
went.
she's not.
I'll
Awesome
just.
session, Vijay and Santosh. It was amazing.
No, I didn't do anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did that.
A good session. I
Same,
think the
Vijay Baba.
questions were really, it piqued people's curiosity.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
I got a sense that the participants got a lot of insights from that, judging by the comments and the questions, they were quite curious about the, different things. I liked Abhishek Jha's question also quite a lot.
Correct.
And Vijay, it was very informative, very well structured.
Very well done.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, the structure and all came from Santosh and Ashok. So that was useful. And I think the other thing was the questions that I saw were also indicating that people are looking at taking the next step. Like, what is the process? In this scenario, would it be useful? Right? What is the methodology? So that kind of hints that people are visualizing how they would take the next step rather than only theoretical.
Yeah.
So that was also something interesting.
And very good attendance also, na?
Very good. Yeah.
Superb attendance.
There was a time there was 62.
Yeah. There was, is it? Oh,
Yeah.
because
It's
I
at
thought
62.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
I saw about 46 people, but after that I lost track. But
No,
60.
there were 60. Even I saw above 60.
Yeah.
Yeah, baat hai. I'm very happy. Okay. I saw 43 and I was happy anyways. 43 out of 61.
No, it
Yeah,
went
yeah.
up and then went down. People just
Went down. Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, good. So I think we should see some questions coming in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some interest.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Great job, team. See you guys.
Great stuff. Great stuff, Vijay. Bye.
Bye.